Welcome back to Red Glasses Talks. The title today is Jackson. So, New Year's Eve 2022, my wife and I were in Charleston, South Carolina. I was going to perform a wedding on New Year's Eve, and I did perform a wedding. So, when we got up and got moving around that day, my wife said, well, let's go down and get one of those little buggies that a guy pulls you along. He rides a bike and you're in the back and you're taking a tour of downtown Charleston. Downtown Charleston is beautiful. So a lot of history there too. So we went down and finally flagged a guy down, and he came over and we got in the little buggy and he starts pedaling that bike and giving us a little history, and his name was Jackson. I think he was probably about 21 years old, and he was going to college there somewhere, but had a great personality and knew a lot of the history and was just delightful to be with. So after about an hour, I said, Jackson, we need to get back to the hotel. We got this wedding tonight. We kind of get ready. So if you don't mind heading on back, that'd be great. So just before we get to the hotel, I said, do you mind pulling over there in that little side area out of the traffic? So he did. And I looked at him, I said, Jackson, turn around. So he turned around and was sitting backwards on the bike seat looking at us. And we're no more than 2 or 3 feet from him. We could reach out and touch his hand. So he's looking at us. He has no idea what's going on. Well, what you need to know is I got the nod. And I looked for the nod, that sense inside of me from the Lord that I'm supposed to say something to someone, in this case it was Jackson, about Jesus. I had no idea where Jackson was coming from. I said, Jackson, I may never see you again, but I want to ask you a question. I said, now when you drop us off here, are you going to go up the street and take a right at that corner and go on down and go back to where you pick up people? He said, yep, that's where I'm going. I said, I got to ask you a question. If you take a ride up there and go down a block or two, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, a truck hits you and it's over for you, where are you going? Jackson, very sharp, handsome young fella, he puts his head down and he begins to weep. And I'm not sure why he's weeping. I said, Jackson, why are you weeping? And he said, well, my grandmother died a couple months ago, and I loved her so much, and I couldn't figure out why he brought her up when the question I asked wasn't about his grandmother, but maybe it was. The only thing I can think of, maybe he was thinking, I wonder where my grandmother went. So I said, Jackson, I'm really sorry about your grandmother. Let's go back to the question. If it's all over, and when it's all over, whenever that is, where are you going? And in a very low voice with tears coming down his cheeks, he said, heaven, I hope. I said, oh, Jackson, what if I could tell you, you could know so. You could know right now for sure, forever, that you're going to be with the Lord and you're going to make heaven, and it's going to make a difference in how you live your life now. Would you want to know that? He said, well, who wouldn't? I said, Jackson, you need to know that Jesus lived. He died on a cross. He rose from the dead. And he did all that for you and me to ensure us that we could have the kind of life and live the kind of life he wants us to live. He can come into your life. He can forgive you and love on you and give you purpose and meaning and power in this life. And I said, Jackson, let me read a great verse to you. And I think I had quoted this to him, but John 3:16, I said, Jackson, for God so loved you that he gave his only son, that if you believe in him, you should not perish, but have eternal life. I said, do you want that? He said, yes, I want that. And I said, in John chapter number 1, verse 12, he said, to as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become a son of God. And all it is a matter of saying, Lord, thank you for what you've done for me. Thank you for dying on the cross for me. Come into my life, clean me up, and help me to become the man you've always wanted me to be. And Jackson prayed that little prayer in front of my wife and I. When the prayer was over, I said, Jackson, you need to understand that Jesus is in your life now. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. Jackson got up off his bicycle seat. He looked at us. He came to my wife and hugged Punky, and he hugged me. And I got his phone number, and he got my information. Within 10 minutes, we were up in the hotel room. He sent me this long text saying, this is going to change my life. I sent him a Bible in a few days and another couple books to read. He was already reading one of the books and said one of his buddies saw him reading it. He wanted the books. And so what's that all about? All that is about knowing that people often are ready to know about Jesus if we will just bring the subject up, not get lost in a lot of detail, tell them what Jesus means to us, and then say, would you like to have Jesus in your life? And then show them how to do that. Simply ask him in. You may stutter, you may be shaken on the inside and outside, but God will honor that. He has left us here as his followers to point people to him. Who could you point to Jesus today?